Welcome, everyone, to American Sports Cavalcade coverage of NHRA Winston Championship drag racing competition from the Western Auto Nationals, presented by Slick 50 from Heartland Park in Topeka, Kansas. Okay, let's kick off the action with the first race in round 2 of Top Duel Eliminator. There is Shelly Anderson, and she is having the best race maybe of her career. All through qualifying in the first round, she has been the steadiest car out here. Kenny Bernstein in round 1 earlier today recorded the second best elapsed time of his career at 4.80, but has lost lane choice to Shelly Anderson.
Steve, Shelly earned that lane choice with a great 479 victory in round number 1. And what a story it's been about Shelly this season. She won the Winter Nationals. Remember, had the problems with the transmission, blew the tire, and it sort of skidded across the finish line on 3 wheels. Her dad, Brad Anderson, said, boy, she is one cool driver. So is Kenny Bernstein. The temperature may be up, but Bernstein's got to be pleased with the performance he's had thus far this weekend without the dreaded parts breakage that has been plaguing him all season long.
Recently, they tested for 7 straight days at Indianapolis Raceway Park, and it has paid off. Bernstein qualified number 4 to 483 with the fastest speed of his career, 303 miles an hour. Shelly Anderson qualified number 5 at a 483. And as we're going to see right now, she defeated Blaine Johnson in round number 1. It was Johnson in the near lane. He had the better reaction time, but couldn't hook the car up. Shelly won it with a special treat.
Boy, that's the quickest pass yet. It's my third 70 in the heat. That's nice.
How many 300-mile-an-hour runs do you have?
None.
You do now.
Well, that's nice, too, I guess. I was late. I'm pretty upset with myself.
Well, I could tell. I thought you'd be a little more excited.
I'm excited. God, it's a long race. There's 3 rounds to go, and they're all tough. I mean, I could have lost this one. I did last weekend and running real good.
Great job. Running real good. Huh, that's an understatement.
Shelly was hard on herself because she was about 0.06 of a second late off the starting line. Blaine Johnson had a brilliant reaction time. Now it is round number 2 action. Kenny Bernstein in the lane nearest the cameras. Shelly Anderson in the Slick 50 car in the far lane. And both cars smoke the tires. Bernstein recovers first, blasts his way across the finish line. Well, it wasn't very pretty, but it was a win for the Budweiser King. 634, a speed of 156 miles an hour. And Shelly won't be particularly happy here in round number 2. She was even slower on her reaction time than she was in round number 1. Next pair of cars, Connie Coletta, the patriarch of the Coletta Racing clan. He is up against the surprising Stevie Foster out of Atkins, Texas.
Surprising? That is an understatement, Mac. Stevie Foster came into Topeka having qualified for only 2 national events in his life and had never won a round. And Tim Richards, crew chief for Connie Coletta, says, well, if all that's true, how come he's got lane choice? And Richards a little crabby anyway. He didn't like the way Connie executed the burnout, and he's not happy without lane choice because he saw what Kenny Bernstein did.
And while the racetrack may appear to be equal, there at least is something going on in the drivers' minds or the crew chiefs that would want them to select a given lane. And the lane of choice has been the far side of the racetrack. Foster qualified 15th with a 498. His first round opponent was the reigning Winston champion, Eddie Hill, who had qualified 2nd with the Pennzoil car at a 482. He had put Stevie Foster here in the lane nearest our cameras.
Eddie Hill was dead late. He was distracted by a vibration on the burnout. Maybe shouldn't have run the car. He wasted a 483 to Foster's slower 489. It's a wonder it wasn't in a ball of fire. They discovered a broken crankshaft in the pits.
And Connie Coletta had qualified 7th at a 486. He beat Pat Austin in round number 1, but he had problems on that run. Ran only a 515. The 489 turned by Stevie Foster to defeat Eddie Hill's much quicker 483, gave him the choice of lanes.
Stevie Foster is away first. Look at this. Another huge upset. He daylights Connie Coletta with a 487, the ride of his life, at 295 miles an hour.
I think maybe Connie and Tim Richards may have underestimated Stevie Foster. The 487 and 295, the quickest and fastest run of his career. Watch this. There's 0.04 of a second in the bank. An advantage at the starting line, going to the white car in the far lane. And Connie Coletta, who runs a 4.90 second elapsed time, never could catch him. So Stevie Foster, who had never won a round of racing in NHRA competition, is now into the semifinals of this Western Auto Nationals. Our next pair of cars could have a definite bearing on our Winston points chase. This is Don Prudhomme in the top 5 in the Winston chase at the moment. The Skoal Bandit is even on top of our qualifying list here with a #1 spot. His opponent, Scott Coletta, the other half of the Coletta Flying Services team. Earlier we saw him beat Joe Amato. He qualified 9th. Prudhomme's qualifying time, 4:82. He beat Clayton Harris in the first round.
Let's watch the staging process. Prudhomme prefers to stage last. So does Scott Coletta. Coletta has made it known that Prudhomme will not dictate how he runs his race car. Let's watch. Into the pre-stage. Prudhomme stages first, and then red lights. A foul start. The snake is disqualified, and he'll be sick about this. He wastes a 486 at 273 to Scott Coletta's engine expiring 492 at 279. The snake struck too quick.
Let's watch again. As they came into the staging beams, the tree flashed green, and the red light came on for Don Prudhomme. The drivers will tell you, if you don't get a red light every now and then, you're not trying very hard. Well, he tried just a hair too hard. Our next 2 cars pit 2 of the new breed of Top Fuel racers. These are the guys in their late 20s and early 30s that are taking over where Don Prudhomme and Connie Coletta are leaving off. You were just riding on the burnout with Tommy Johnson Jr., who wheels the Mopar Express Lube car.
Tommy Johnson Jr., you take a poll of the other drivers, may be the best Top Fuel pilot on the track today. Incredible reaction times. Corey McClanathan will be trying to match those reaction times. He's had a little bit of a problem in that area this year. He won the Phoenix race. Tommy Johnson Jr. in round #1, we should tell you, uncorked low elapsed time of the entire event at 4.77 seconds, quicker even than Shelly Anderson.
And set a new national speed mark at 306.64 miles an hour in the process. Every one of our 16 drivers are so good on the starting line, it just continues to add pressure to the drivers to excel.
TJ Jr., an incredible reaction time. Tire smoke for Corey Mack. This one was a slam dunk, but oh, he slowed way down, Mack. 493, only 293. Not a record pace there.
Steve, the reason may be he popped the supercharger right at the finish line. Lots of work ahead for that crew. Well, Stevie Foster's dream continues. Now he faces Tommy Johnson Jr. in the semis. Scott Coletta and Kenny Bernstein will duel it out in the final 4. That'll be coming up in just a few moments.
You're watching.
On board in the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge Daytona of Al Hoffman, and he's getting smoked in. Same process underway for the Loctite Fast Touring Dodge Daytona, driven by Whit Bazemore. Bazemore has had a rather successful season thus far with very minimal parts breakage. He qualified 12th here at a 537. His opponent in round #1 was Chuck Etchells, who has nothing but fond memories of this racetrack because it was last October he recorded the first ever 4-second elapsed time by a funny car. But today, he won't have fond thoughts about this. A red light at the starting line, wasting a great 528. Bazemore with a 577 got the win, and Whit now faces this man, Al Hoffman from Umatilla, Florida, the #4 qualifier at a 5.20, beat Gordy Bonin in round #1, stopping Gordy Bonin's win streak at 2.
In fact, he beat him with a very tiny little hole shot. Whit Bazemore, his new crew chief, Rob Flynn, has really turned this operation around. Quite honestly, they called him Blazemore a lot. He had so many fires, but this guy is running a very clean operation, one of the youthful crew chiefs in funny car racing. Hoffman, he wants to hang on to that points lead over John Force. He's got it right now by the narrowest of margins. You're on board the Western Auto Slick 50 Special with Al Hoffman. That's clutch dust you see in the cockpit, not to be concerned about. Bazemore just about tips it over trying to recover from smoking tires. So it is Al Hoffman at 525. That's steady, 289.
And that steady performance is keeping Al Hoffman in the Winston points lead. Up next, the McDonald's Oldsmobile, driven by Cruz Pedregon, another of those contenders for the Winston Championship. If he were to win it this season, it would mark 2 of the series championships. He won it back in 1992. He more than won it. He took it away from John Force. Here he gets a giant break. His opponent was to have been Richard Hartman at the wheel of the Johnny West Dodge, but he's not here. More on that in a moment.
Al, obviously, you couldn't pick a better race to do well at.
No, I don't know what we ran, but it was good enough to turn a wind light on first round, second round. So Western Auto and Slick 50, we're happy to be here in the semifinals for them.
Very conservative on the leave.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I got distracted a little bit. Whitley is real good. I did my job in the first round, had a 470 light and earned it. So whatever it takes, we'll be there for next round.
The final four, the 525.
There was about 0.07 of a second difference between Bazemore and Hoffman. Hoffman just was able to outperform the tire-smoking Bazemore. For Cruz Pedregon, most racers will tell you they need a little bit of luck. This is his dose of luck this day, as Pedregon had qualified second at a 5:05, beat Jim Blake in the first round. Richard Hartman qualified 10th, beat Gary Bolger in the first round, but he's not here. Bob Fry will tell us why.
Well, there's not a lot of urgency in the Johnny West, Richard Hartman Motorola pit area. Johnny, you guys won that first round, had a chance to go up against Cruiser in round number 2, but you were a no-show. Tell us why.
Well, when we for about the past 5-6 races now, we've been having a heck of a time trying to keep the back main bearing in the motor without trying to make it go black. We got the whole motor back together, and then we discovered that the back main was black, so we just didn't have enough time to change engines.
Matter of time more than a matter of parts?
Right.
And a blackened main bearing, of course, indicating that you've got some serious problems in the oiling system. Steve?
Had Richard Hartman come to the starting line, Cruz would not be in that lane because Hartman had lane choice. Cruiser wants it in the final four, and wowzers, he may get it on a single of 5:19 at a shutoff 266.
The points leader, Al Hoffman, had a pair of 5:25s, but John Force just obliterated everybody's thinking with a 5:07 victory in round number 1.
Unbelievable performance with John Force, and that has got to demoralize a young driver like Dean Scusa. Family operation, got a runner-up this year, but that man Austin Coyle just strikes the fear in the hearts of every competitor when they see him out there in front of Force's car. I mean, that 5:07. What is Scusa to do? All you can do is maybe try to lock the clutch up a little sooner, but you don't have lane choice. You're going to smoke the tires. The best thing you can do is go up there and run your race and hope Force makes a mistake. Scusa, a rock and roll drummer when he's not out on the racetrack, and a pretty darn good one, too. John Force, well, he just rocks and rolls his way through life.
The interesting thing to note, with a 5:07 in the first round, John had qualified at a 5:04. Nighttime, daytime, doesn't matter to John. It's race time.
Pre-staged. What can Scusa do with Force? He moves in first. Force is there. Scusa up in smoke. Look at Force go. Good God. A 5:02 at 296. He beats his own nighttime numbers in an 85-degree racetrack. Let's go to the pits. Bob Fry's with his next potential victim.
Why isn't this man smiling? He's got Force in the next round. All you got to do is pick up a stinking little 210s.
Yeah, we have to try to do that in a bad lane. All I can say is those guys over there are awesome. I mean, even though we've got the points lead at this point in time, that's still the car to beat. It always has been, and it looks like it's going to be for a while, to be honest with you.
Here's the Moon Eyes Dodge, owned by and tuned by Jim Dunn, driven by Kenji Okazaki. His opponent, another Dodge, the Fruit of the Loom car out of Nashville, Tennessee, KC Hollywood Spurlock at the wheel.
This is the car tuned by Ronnie Swearingen and won the opening race of the year, the Winter Nationals out of Pomona, California, and hopes to stay in the thick of the points chase. He needs a good outing in Topeka to do that, though. He's starting to fall back. Kenji Okazaki, the Japanese national, has become one of the most popular drivers in the pits with the fans. They will line up forever to get his autograph. He's a wonder.
These two cars ran very well in qualifying. Spurlock number 3 at a 5:17. Kenji number 6 at a 5:26. Oh, what a hole shot for Kenji Okazaki, and he smokes the tires. Spurlock takes the win. He shuts it off early at 2:32. His elapsed time of only 5:32 costs him the choice of lanes in the semifinals. But Okazaki was very aggressive off the starting line. That's a good reason why the tires went up in smoke. So Spurlock loses the lane choice to Pedregon in the final 4. The other side of the ladder, well, he's going to have to work some magic. Al Hoffman up against John Force. The story's been told there of 5:02. No doubt about who has lane choice.
Right now, Dave McClellan, it is time for cars on steroids. The pro stockers, the factory hot rods, whatever you want to call them.
Kurt Johnson driving the Sunny Hill Movada Shoes entry up against the Castrol Super Clean car, a pair of Oldsmobile Cutlasses. Larry Morgan. That's the view from inside the cockpit of his race car. Right now, here's the standings after round one. Scott Jeffreyon is the leader, followed by Darrell Alderman, then WJ, KJ, and Jim Yates rounds out the top 5 in the Winston points chase. So you can see, for Kurt Johnson, this is a most important race. Bear in mind, it was up at Englishtown just a few short weeks ago that Kurt set the drag racing world on its ear when he ran a 6:98. The first ever 6-second elapsed time. Larry Morgan had qualified 5th here, while Kurt Johnson qualified number 4, 7:21s a pair. Morgan beat Mike Thomas. Lewis Warden was the victim for Kurt Johnson, who holds the lane choice here by a slim 100th of a second difference in their round number 1 time.
That is not the Oldsmobile Kurt Johnson ran in the 6s with. He scrunched it up against a wall at the new track at Virginia, and it's a long ways from being ready to race again. That is a borrowed mount from the Scribner brothers. Let's ride in the back seat with Larry Morgan as we look at the Lenco levers that control the 5-speed. There's the front fender of Kurt Johnson. Kurt Johnson, Larry's pulling away, do something. Not pull the parachute. Kurt Johnson wins it at 7:21, 192. Oh, Morgan isn't going to like this. He was quicker in the elapsed time department at 7:20, but late off the mark.
Watch in replay. The car in the far lane got the advantage, and that's what won him this race. He had the slower elapsed time. Morgan, who we took the ride with, don't worry, Steve. He knew exactly what was going on when he saw Kurt Johnson pulling away. But if you got your foot all the way through the firewall, there's not much else you can do on these carbureted, gasoline-burning race cars. There's the margin of victory. Kurt Johnson wins it. Mark Osborne. The big upset occurred in round number 1 when the Pyroil Oldsmobile beat Kurt's daddy, Warren, while Jim Yates and his Dynamax Pontiac continues to show the improvement that has vaulted him into the top 5. Yates had qualified number 6 here. His elapsed time was a 7:24. He beat Jerry Haas in the first round, while Osborne, as we watched, came from his number 14 qualifying spot to whip up on Warren Johnson in that first round upset.
Yates is fresh off a runner-up victory, the second time in his career, as a matter of fact, just a few weeks ago in Columbus, Ohio. Got beat by Scott Jeffreyon, but it really pumped him up. He's got some Dick Maskin horsepower under the hood of that blue and white Pontiac, so it's General Motors a pair. One from the Pontiac division, one from the Oldsmobile side. They bring these engines way up high in the RPM range, sidestep the clutch, and they see the last amber light. Away first is Osborne, but Yates covers him immediately. Oh, Jim Yates is on it today. 7.19 seconds, 192 miles an hour. Osborne left first, but had no muscle on the top end. 7:31 at 190.
The next pair of cars already in the burnout procedure. That's another Pontiac. The Pennzoil Trans Am Firebird formula of Jerry Ekman up against the new, sleek, zoomy Avenger driven by Darrell Alderman. For Jerry Ekman, if he doesn't advance another round, this day has been a success because when he won the first round, that's the first win of the season for him.
Darrell Alderman qualified number 2 at a 7:19, beat Troy Coughlin in round number 1. Jerry Ekman, he qualified number 10 with a 7:28 and got his first round win of the year, as you said, Mac, beating Frank Iaconio in round number 1. Now let's talk a little bit about the car over in the far lane, Darrell Alderman. I asked the crew chief, Dave Hutchins, does this Avenger want something different than the Daytona? He said, yes, we just don't know what it is yet. Keep feeding it power and clutch till we find out.
What a shot. You see him snap his left foot back. That's coming off the clutch. He pulls the levers, and Darrell Alderman marches away from Jerry Ekman. Elapsed time 7:19, keeping pace with Jim Yates at 193 miles an hour. Here is the Daytona up against the Cutlass, and once again, we're on board inside that Dodge. Looking out through the windshield, Jeffreyon, number 1 qualifier, 7:13, beat David Rampey in the first round. While Schmidt had qualified in the 8th spot, Steve beat Mark Powick in his first round race.
And if Scott Jeffreyon can hold on to low ET of the event, which he has now with that 7:13, That's worth 50 bonus Winston points, and they all add up at the end of the season. Scott Jeffrey with a short wheelbase Daytona desperately needs to keep lane choice. First, he's got to win, but he'd like to run quicker than the opponent he'll face in the succeeding round. Look to your right. You see Steve Schmidt? I don't either. Neither does Scott Jeffrey Jeffrey wins it, and that'll get him lane choice probably 7:13, 194 miles an hour for sure it will, to a losing 7:21.91.
Steve, as we watch this one in replay, take a look at the car in the near lane. Again, a big advantage at the starting line, one opponent over the other. This time it was Schmidt picking up an early lead, but he was unable to hold it as they planted the rear tires on the Dodge, and it just marched through the gears until at the finish line he had about a half a car length lead. Maybe that race was just a little bit closer than Scott Jeffrey had thought it would be. But either way, the end result is Scott Jeffrey wins and advances into the semifinals, where his opponent will be Kurt Johnson by some 7/100ths of a second. Jeffrey holds the choice of lanes. The other side of the ladder, Jim Yates and Darrell Alderman duke it out. Dodge against Pontiac, and here by 1,000th of a second, Yates has got the lane choice. Scott Coletta and Kenny Bernstein now in the semifinals of Top Fuel Eliminator. Again, all important to Scott because he wants to continue to amass the Winston points. Kenny Bernstein is so far out of it, he's not even in the top 10 in the points chase at the moment. And for Bernstein, he's carrying our onboard camera, and this is the way they direct traffic, getting him to back up into the exact spot where he did his burnout. His crew chief, Dale Armstrong, performing those duties.
Let's remember, though, 2 weeks ago, Scott Coletta, the American International Airways car, won the Oldsmobile Spring Nationals in Columbus on 3 wheels. An incredible engine and supercharger explosion that took the tire off, almost knocked the scoreboard down. Dick LaHaye, the crew chief, went over it for a week, and very emotional moment. Dale Armstrong knows what those are like. Crew chiefs worry so much. The drivers aren't their employers, they're their friends.
And Dick LaHaye, of course, knows what it's like to be a driver. He won the Winston Championship way back in 1987. Based on previous round performance, you'd have to throw the advantage to Bernstein at a 4.80, quickest time of either one of the cars, but possibly Coletta been just a bit more consistent.
Bernstein up in smoke, cannot recover. Scott Coletta, Dick LaHaye stepped it up. 4.86 seconds, 299.70 miles an hour, almost the triple century mark.
A very aggressive run for Bernstein, but he felt probably he had to take a shot at Scott. Scotty got the advantage at the starting line. Bernstein, the aggression paid off until the tires let go. And then it was all for naught as Scott Coletta, a very safe and sane, if you will, 486 at 299. Next pair of cars, the Mopar Express Lube car. Tommy Johnson Jr. has got both the low lap time and top speed of the meet, a 477 at 306. This is our camera looking back at Tommy inside the cockpit. That little butterfly device is actually the steering wheel. Over in the far lane, it is Stevie Foster. And of course, the story is that a number of the crew, people from the late Jimmy Nix's crew, including Lee Norris, the clutch man, working on the Stevie Foster car. So Tommy Johnson Jr. not about ready to count this bunch out by any stretch.
Tommy Johnson Jr. right now wishes he had lane choice. He watched Bernstein smoke the tires right off the launch pad. Plus, Stevie Foster's reaction times have been really good. This time it's TJ up the mark first. Raw fuel coming out of the engine. It is Stevie Foster at 489. 294 miles an hour, and Mac, he's in the final.
Can you believe it? What a Cinderella story indeed. Stevie Foster into the finals against Scott Coletta. Our in-car camera shows us a replay. That's how hard these cars accelerate. And bear in mind, Tommy Johnson Jr. only ran a 501. He dropped the cylinder, it failed to fire, so he basically made the run on 7 cylinders. On paper, a close race indeed in the final. Scott Coletta, a 486. Foster, a 489. Here we are in Funny Car Eliminator. This is the semifinal of competition. You're looking at Cruz Pedregon wheeling the McDonald's Oldsmobile owned by Larry Minor.
There is a problem with his opponent's automobile. NHRA officials in there. Casey Spurlock is being pushed back. Ronnie Swearingen Still has his ear protectors on, but nope, it's over. The second bye run in a row for Cruz Pedregon. The earlier one, it wouldn't have mattered if Richard Hartman was there or not, I don't think, at that 5:19. Let's see if he can do that again.
I said earlier that you have to have a little bit of luck. Well, Cruz Pedregon's getting a whole lot of it here at Heartland Park. 2 consecutive single runs. All he's got to do is keep it between the guardrail and the center line, and maybe he could earn himself lane choice. Pretty good looking pass.
Other than John Force, it's an outstanding pass at 5.14, 287 miles an hour. Either John Force or Al Hoffman in the race to come will have to run quicker than that to get lane choice, and it is important today.
And the interesting thing to note is that Pedregon is improving with each round. That was quicker than the previous single that he had. That's Tommy Anderson. He's the guy that is starting Al Hoffman driving the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge. A squirt of gasoline into the injectors. The electric motor spins over the supercharger, which in turn, of course, burns over the entire engine. A flip of the switch and the engine comes to life. We've just gotten word on what happened to Casey Spurlock. An absolutely unbelievable occurrence as they were coming up through the staging lanes. The inner liner, the inside liner of the left rear slick blew. That let all the air pressure that was contained in the inner liner come out into the racing tire, and you just couldn't run under those conditions. Now the question is, can John Force continue to dominate? Hoffman hoping to impress the title right sponsors of this event, because they are the same ones that are on the side of his race car, is going to have to reach deep and come up with something, maybe just a little bit different, to try to stop John Force. Let's go to Steve.
It's lonely out there running by yourself all the time.
Yeah, it is. It's you know, we're running really good. I think we're on to something here. Get to race my old buddy Force in the final. Oh, that's great. We've been struggling here lately, but we hope
Hoffman could beat Force?
Well, that's possible, but Force running awful good, and you know, we have something for him here. We ran an 05 Friday night, so I think we can run better.
Just ran a 14.
That's good. We can. We need to pick up a 10th or so. Thanks.
Pick up a 10th, just like it's so simple to do. If everybody could pick up a 10th, everybody would. It's a tougher task indeed.
Everybody would make the kind of money Austin Coyle does, which is rumored to be, on a good year, maybe $225,000. Force stays pretty broke, but his crew lives well. The Dodge Daytona body comes down on the Western Auto car of Al Hoffman. They call it a Dodge Viper. Just a little zinger at Force, who calls his car a Chevy Lumina. We're not sure that it's not still a, well, it starts with an O. All right, here is Force trying to run yet another O, and it may take that to challenge Hoffman. Hoffman did a very aggressive burnout. Look to the left. Oh, John Force just blows by. Al Hoffman has a problem. Force has none. 5-12 to the roar of the crowd at 288 miles an hour. That gives him lane choice over Pedregon.
Steve, I don't know whether you caught it or not, but on the in-car shot, there was a flash of flame through the window. So there was some mechanical problems on Al Hoffman's car. Generally, when you see the flash of flame in that location, in that window, it is a head gasket that got pushed out by excess pressure. He was right along with Force until the problem set in, and then the Dodge in the near lane slowed, and John Force marched on to a final round appearance against Cruz Pedregon and will hold the lane choice in that challenge. Once again, the Cruiser and the Force man going off for a championship in NHRA Winston competition.
You were taking no chances on red lighting up there.
No, I ain't taking no chance on that. I heard Brudhomme and Bernstein talk about these valuable points, and I used to laugh. And I'm tired of being sick over them. My buddy, did I win? I don't even know.
You red lighted.
I did?
That's a cruel joke. No, you didn't. You ran 5-12, and you got the points lead back.
He's, how's... Then you tried to run over me down here. Run over my car. Hey, Castrol, Jolly Rancher, Wag Shop, Dorman, boys. We're back. Thank you for the line. And the nightmare continues because it's been in my camp for 2 weeks and I've been sick and I can't take it no more.
Well, the pressure's off Hoffman. You can see he's more animated than he's been in a long time. We're going to be coming back with more action. Heartland Park, Topeka, don't you go away. Jim Yates and his Dynamax Pontiac, the Formula Firebird, the guy that is going to challenge Darrell Alderman.
Dave Hutchins says the problem with, if there is a problem with the Avenger, it wants to drive through the clutch. What does that mean, Mac? You got a Pro Stock license.
Well, what it means is that as you let the clutch out, the RPM comes up too high and goes past the point where the clutch should start to lock up. It is sliding the clutch in effect, and therefore it never really locks up good.
Tony Yates, she does a heck of a lot of the work on this car, including some of the clutch work. Jim Yates may well be in the driver's seat. He's got lane choice. That's all important.
Steve, the drivers say that one lane just a little bit smoother than the other, and that may well be why the choice, particularly in the Pro Stock cars, is so important.
Plus, the right-hand or far lane tends to get a little bit of a shiny spot on it. Alderman, poised and ready. Watch that left foot.
Neither driver has staged yet. Look at Alderman. Look over to his left. He's wondering what's Yates doing, and Yates is just sitting there wondering maybe what Alderman's doing. Buster Couch, very patient at the moment.
Buster Couch is right now starting to just walk away. Let him play. Who cares? Goes over to the Wayne County Speed Shop guy. Mike Sullivan says, how you doing today?
Look at that. Buster Couch just sat down. Now Jim Yates broke. He went in. Darrell Alderman creeps forward. The tree's green.
Boy, Darrell made sure he had that clutch all the way out, didn't he? But out in front of him is Jim Yates. By a half a car, it is Jim Yates, and Tony gets airborne. We have liftoff with the young lady. 721 to a 725. Was that a great onboard camera shot or what? They both run 191.
After all of the games played at the starting line, Darrell Alderman was 0.02 of a second quicker off the mark. The car, though, could not run the number necessary to take the win. By 0.04 of a second, Jim Yates prevailed in the performance department. When you get down to the finish line and you look at it in terms of distance, here was the margin of victory of 23 thousandths of a second. And you talk about a race being decided by just a few feet. This one could actually be measured in just a few inches. Down to the far end, and Steve.
What was going through that brain of yours as you two just sat there?
I knew it was going to be a battle when I go up there and run him. I mean, he is a tough guy to beat. And I figured that even though we'd run faster on the last round, we were basically the underdog, and I was going to make him earn it. And we went out there, we went out there to set low ET of the race and to drive as good as we could drive.
You outran him a 721 to his 25.
Thank God. I'm going to tell you, those guys back there and my crew have been working so hard, and this is just good to come down here and win a few rounds, make it all worthwhile. Another final, 2 in a row.
Bet he doesn't get lane choice. I bet he doesn't get lane choice.
Well, Jim Yates may be confident, but I don't know that I'd put any money on it because he's got to withstand the onslaught of the other Dodge, and this has been the quicker car all weekend long. Scott Jeffrey on.
I tell you, Jim Yates is one of the few drivers I would kind of taunt down there. You can get a black eye doing that, but he's such a good guy, and he's out here to have fun as well as win races. Aren't we all?
Up against the Dodge is an Oldsmobile driven by Kurt Johnson, another of the loaner cars out of the Scribner brothers camp. When Kurt crashed the 6-second Cutlass, he had to go back to the bank of race cars owned by the Scribners and say, hey, let me borrow it again until I get this one fixed. For Scott Jeffrey on, he's using the tried and true Dodge that has carried him to several national event victories and the most success he's ever had in his brief career.
The Dodge drivers today have been very, very cautious on the starting line, trusting in their horsepower to get them to the other end. Let's see what Jeffrey on does. A staging battle? No. Scott's in. Kurt's in. Oh, it doesn't matter when Jeffrey on leaves because Kurt Johnson left too soon. By 9 thousandths of a second, Kurt Johnson has red lighted away this round. Wouldn't have mattered. Scott Jeffrey on trounced him anyway with a 718, 193. You didn't get lane choice, Jim Yates.
Now let's take a look at the replay here, and you can see it was just a few thousandths of a second too quick that Kurt Johnson left the starting line in the Movada Shoes Oldsmobile, and as he did, the big red bulb came on. That indicated he was disqualified, automatically putting Scott Jeffrey on into the finals against Jim Yates for the second race in a row, the same two drivers racing for the title.
Scott, I just won a bet with Jim Yates. I bet on you for lane choice, and you got it with an 18.
Yeah, it was a little loose out there, but lane choice is all important here, and looking forward to another final round with Jim. All the Mopar fans we got here in the middle of America, we want to put on a good show for them.
I sense a quiet confidence in you I didn't see last year.
Well, when you work with Wayne County, Darrell Alderman, and all the guys I get to work with every day, it'd make anybody confident.
That man, Stevie Foster, told me of Pomona back in February. I had no idea who he was. He failed to qualify, but he ran in the 4s. He said, Mr. Evans, someday we'll talk at the far end. Well, today was the day. We have talked 3 times, and maybe it'll be 4. First off, the Pro Stock Final. Scott Jeffreyon and Jim Yates.
Deja vu all over again as these two drivers met just a couple of weeks ago up in Columbus, Ohio. The outcome there found Scott Jeffreyon coming up the winner. Jim Yates wants to change that here, but he's got some work cut out for him. His quickest elapsed time of eliminations is a 7.19 second charge out of the Pontiac. Jeffreyon's times have all been in the 17s, and his slowest time of a 7.18 is quicker than Jim Yates's quickest of the day.
Well, that tells me that Yates in the near lane will play like Paul Bunyan and try to chop that tree down. That may be his only shot. He tried it on Alderman, didn't pull it off. Alderman was out first, but Yates had the power. He had him outgunned. He does not have Jeffreyon outgunned. He may have to outdrive him.
Now the question here is, will Scott Jeffreyon play the games that Darrell Alderman did? Nope, he did earlier this season, and that's what, of course, engendered that war of words, if you will, between Scott and Warren Johnson. Now we see both drivers are into the pre-stage lights up at the top of the Christmas tree. In reality, they're about 8 inches away from the actual starting line.
No games whatsoever. Yates went in, followed by Scott. Scott yanking the levers. Do you see anything to the right? Nope. That's because a full, almost car length back is Jim Yates. Scott Jeffreyon has won 2 in a row and pads his points lead at 7:15 to a 7:21. But Yates had him by 300ths off the mark. It just wasn't enough.
Remarkable performances all day long by Jeffreyon. A pair of 7.13s, a 7.14, a 7.18, and now here in the final round, 7.15 seconds, his speed 194 miles an hour. Jim Yates tried everything he could, including a 300th of a second advantage off the starting line, but Jeffreyon was most confident in the power of the Mopar Parts Dodge, and it laid away that Dynamax Pontiac by, as Steve said, just about a half a car length. Steve?
Scott, did you know for sure that you had won that drag race?
Well, I did when the wind light come on over in my lane there, Steve. I'd like to say hi to my wife. Honey, it's only another 3 weeks. We're going to have ourselves a daughter, and we needed this for that new house.
That is 8 consecutive win lights in NHRA competition. Amazing.
Hey, you know what the best thing is? You know why they're happening? My buddy John Myers gave me this little pin right here. It says expect to win, and since he gave me that, that means a lot. That's coming from a Pro Stock Motorcycle World Champion.
Attitude can be everything, right, Dave?
And Steve, what a difference in attitude we see from Scott Jeffreyon. If you remember back, Memphis a year ago was his first win. Now he leads the Winston points chase by more than 1,000 points over his teammate Darrell Alderman. Warren and Kurt are 3rd and 4th. Jim Yates remains number 5. Funny car final, John Force and the Castrol GTX Chevy Lumina, the dominant force, to make a pun, of this entire weekend in this category of competition.
You know my motto, all puns intended. Here comes Cruz Pedregon to cruise through the burnout process. Force really laid one down. That's car owner Larry Miner from Hemet, California. Lee Beard trying to get a word with him. A very, very short burnout by Cruz. That's probably what Austin Coyle wanted Force to do. Force saw that mountain of people in that grandstand and said, hey, watch this, I'll go down and wave at him. That drives Austin and Bernie Federle absolutely nuts. Once Force gets in that car and it starts, even though they have 2-way radios, you can't control it.
If you'll recall, John went to the short burnout procedures and he was losing drag races as what he felt was the result of it. Whether it had any bearing or not, I don't know. The heat and the Goodyear tires really does not require that long smoky burnout, but ever the showman. Force is out there, as Steve said, waving to the crowd.
Mike Green backing up Cruz Pedregon. We stopped by his pit just before the car went into the staging lanes. He said, I have not hopped this thing up. I don't think the lane will take it. We'll go up there, hope Cruz can do his job. He usually does, and hope that lane will hold it. I mentioned some shiny patches. It's that way right now. You almost look like you went out and polished it with one of those floor sander deals, you know?
Yesterday here at Topeka, the temperature was 105 degrees. Today, much more pleasant, if that's the proper phrase. It's about 88 to 90 degrees, a nice breeze blowing, and we have not had the unbelievably unbearable conditions that we had yesterday. Everybody was walking around like zombies because of the heat.
You could tell which racer still had air conditioning in his trailer where the crowds were. All right, Cruz Pedregon, this is for all the marbles right now. John Force wants 200 more points to distance himself from Al Hoffman. Hoffman rooting for Cruz Pedregon.
Pedregon the last to stage. And by just a few thousandths the first to lead, but it is all moot because up in smoke goes the Oldsmobile Cutlass-bodied car, and John Force has won yet another one with another sterling performance. 5.10 of 510 at a speed of 292 miles an hour. You can see the effort put forth by Pedregon. The car launched, and just a few feet later, actually just about 150 feet off the starting line, the car lost traction as the clutch stages began to come in. There was just too much power and too much clutch for the tires to hold it. Force had it dialed in exactly right to another great 5:10 elapsed time.
And he's as happy as if this was his first ever win, a big one.
It's a good feeling when they tell your old man you're going down the grade, but I haven't had a win since the Fram Autolite Nationals. I know my people, Castro, Jolly Rancher, the whole band, they're happy to see this old Chevrolet run.
You weren't about to red light again.
Not a chance. My old nerves, my old knees are knocking up there, Stevie, but old Cruiser's a good racer. I don't know what happened, but he'll be the guy to win, to beat to the championship. We're going to get there.
Can't add anything to that, Mac.
Steve, when you're behind in performance, as the Cruiser was, you got to try everything. They may not have hopped it up, but it was just too strong for this track. John continues to lead over Al Hoffman. Spurlock is third, followed by Cruz Pedregon. Chuck Etchells, number 5 in the Winston Chase. Halfway through this Winston season, a total of 18 events. This is number 9.
Here at the NHRA Western Auto Nationals, it's the final pair of cars. And a lot of the fans are thinking, do you believe in miracles? Stevie Foster racing Scott Coletta. Coletta, who won in a ball of fire 2 weeks ago. Stevie Foster, who not only has never won, he had never gotten a single round victory before coming here today. His crew's answer to every question is, we'll just make it go faster.
Steve, we're looking at the numbers between these two cars. In the 3 rounds of eliminations run today, it has been consistent 480s for Foster. Once Coletta delved into the 490s, his crew chief Dick LaHaye says everything's okay here. That was not the case in the finals just 2 weeks ago when Scott Coletta exploded an engine which burst into a ball of flame, shooting some parts out to cut down a tire. He was able to keep it under control, totally uninjured, won the race, and now is in the lead in the Winston points chase.
Stevie Foster is sitting in the backup car for Laurie Johns, who quit racing 4 years ago, so that'll tell you how old that hot rod is. Can he pull it off in the near lane? A good leave.
Oh, he dropped a cylinder, Steve. You see the raw fuel coming out of the exhaust pipe on the left-hand side. Scott Coletta wins 2 in a row. His elapsed time, a great 482 at 299 miles an hour. The American International Airways car adds to his Winston lead. Look at Stevie Foster's car in the near lane. Scott got the advantage off the starting line, and it was magnified by the fact that Stevie Foster was running on 7 cylinders. That raw fuel just above the left rear tire. There you see it even better in this camera angle. That indicates that cylinder was not firing. It was a dead load. And when you lose a cylinder on one of these cars, you're losing something like 650 horsepower. So it makes a big difference. Steve?
Scott, it's a lot more fun to win with all 4 wheels still in the car and no fire hoses spraying us down.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's great. You know, Stevie, he's doing a heck of a job. You know, I feel real good for him. And then Dick and the guys and have doing an excellent job. Dad, my wife, my son, happy birthday. He's going to be 1 next Wednesday. And guys at Suburban and you know, it's...
Go celebrate with your crew, huh?
Okay.
Mac?
Steve, Scott Coletta, number 2 last season, could well be the racer to beat for the Winston title because he's got a 700-plus points lead over Joe Amato. His dad, Connie's in 3rd, followed by the Snake, Don Prudhomme. Corey McLenithan rounds out the top 5.